Hi, everyone. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Nicole.
So I have Alex here. He is the Senior Manager for Infrastructure Demand Planning at AWS. Thank you for joining me today for an EQ Soundbite chat. Just spoke to you briefly about what we'll be talking about, and it's really, really nice to have you here. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure being here, and thank you so much for thinking of me and then providing me with the opportunity for this chat. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. For those who haven't met you on the platform, it would be really nice if you could maybe give us a little introduction about yourself, your interests. Yeah, it doesn't have to be too long, 20 seconds, see what you can fit in.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Yeah, my pleasure. So my name is Alex Rigo. I am as you said, I'm the capacity planning lead over at AWS. Basically, it means I'm responsible for 80% of the commercial cloud platform and 100% of the government platform. A little bit about me. I am a New York transplant to the West Coast now. So I officially relocated here back in January. Though I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. And after completing university, actually had the opportunity to go and work abroad and was an expat for a number of years through consulting companies like Corporate Executive Board, Accenture, before I joined Novartis Pharmaceuticals, and then came over to AWS.
Nice. And what's that shift like? Because you said that you were quite pleasantly surprised with Seattle. So what's that shift?
Yeah. Well, first off, everyone told me for the longest time when you go to Seattle, it's nothing but gray and rainy. But in all honesty, it has not rained here for over 70 plus days.
Oh, wow.
So it's been great, beautiful weather, and I've been enjoying it. So yeah, that was one pleasant surprise. And the second is living so close to the water. I've never actually done that before. I've lived around near lakes and stuff, but never near an ocean. And this has been quite an experience, being able to just take a walk out along the waterfront every night with my dogs. It's been a great experience. So yeah.
I can imagine that would have been really nice when we were all locked down and you were able to get out and see the sea.
Yeah. Yes.
So I was thinking that we could sort of dive in a little bit deeper, and I'd love to ask you a little bit about your IT operations experience and project management experience. And if you could just tell us a little bit about the challenges and the benefits that you've had working in those spaces, because I know that you've mentioned that there's the time limits and the budgets, and I guess what advice would you have for someone who's working under those strict constraints, and how have you managed to get that going for yourself?
That's a great question. The constraints within IT operations and project management are always, like you said, around time and budget. And one of the key things that I've found that's been really helpful to me is to be transparent with my stakeholders in regards to how much money it's going to cost and the amount of time it's going to take. In my time running IT ops, my leads, especially when I was reporting to CIOs or CTOs, they always found it shocking when I would be the one in the meeting who just had the courage and say, hey, we can do all these strategic initiatives that you want to get done and keep the lights on, but it's going to cost us, 20% more or X percentage more per quarter or per year in order to do this. But I always came back I always included options. So I would always take a look and see, okay, this is your, what you would love to have their pie in the sky dream. And then I would compartmentalize it and break it down into, okay, if we were to do pie in the sky, here's how much I'm going to need and how much time I'm going to need. But if I look at what are the strategic important initiatives that we need to get done and keep things going, then with the existing budget, we would only be able to do 1, 2, 3 and ops, or in certain cases, I would find initiatives that I would go, we can do B, C, Z, and then ops. And basically explain the cases around, okay, if this is the benefits if we do it, if we structure our resources around these things this way versus another way, and do that analysis and breakdown for my leadership to understand, because they don't want, many people think executives, they don't want to know the details. They don't want to dive deep and, get into the weeds. So you have to do that for them when it comes to that, but present it back to them as a strategic decision.
Yeah.
If you go too much into every single column or tower and what's gonna happen, you're gonna lose them immediately. Yeah. Just highlight, the 2-3 key points per each initiative. But also, if it's a presentation up front, if it's either if it's a PowerPoint or a Word doc, because that's at AWS, we use a lot of Word docs. Still getting used to that. Your first opening line should be, what were the challenges and what are the decisions that they need and what the choices are.
Yeah.
Dead stop. So that at least right there in the beginning, they know exactly what you're asking of them. And then you can go into the details of, okay, behind each one, and let them drive the discussion with their questions.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this? Why do you want to do that? Why can't we mix it this way? And this is where playing chess, if anyone has played chess before, comes into play as a key skill. Think of all the potential options or moves that they're going to want to make or questions they're going to ask you, and have either document the questions in the appendix and have answers right there, or just have them in your back pocket ready with a response.
Yeah.
You don't want to blow up a presentation to over 100 slides. I never ever did that in my career. But I would keep notes in actually my little notepads, because I was known for keeping notepads around. The low tech guy with notepads. But I would always have my answers to those questions, those scenarios there ready to go. So that way I can help them and steer the discussion back to, yep, I know you want to explore those options, but let's get back to, here are the key decisions, because you're always going to have the 1 or 2 stakeholders who are going to try to steer the discussion in a way that they want to get their own project or their own initiative going, and you have to challenge it back and push it back to the top ones. Now, that's not an easy thing to do. It takes a lot of backbone to do that, because you are challenging your leadership. But that's what's helped me in my career. If anything, I remember my last boss at Novara, she specifically called out, you could be a pain in the ass when it comes to these stakeholder meetings, but that is the one thing that benefits you, because you will not stand down from leadership. You will challenge leadership, which is something we need, because we are not always correct. We don't have the details. We don't have the insights that you and your team have. So you need to make sure that we are going down the right path for the business, for the company, for our patients, so on and so forth.
It's definitely about having the knowledge, but also defiance in that knowledge, knowing what's best for the company, for others, because you're an expert in that field. And it's almost like the way that you got out your notebook, it's like having your own FAQs, your own tailored at the back. Brilliant. Yep. So I kind of wanted to move over to the jump that you made in terms of getting to those senior roles. And I know that that's a natural jump given the experience and the knowledge that you have. But I also imagine that there is tact needed and certain qualities that's needed. And I think we touched upon that, the defiance and making sure that you're always pushing against back leadership, knowing what you know. So I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about how you got to that jump and the qualities that helped you to enter those spaces, apart from that defiance and leadership.
Yeah, that's the defiance and leadership does help. But one thing that actually proved really beneficial was having mentors. I always had sought out people who could help me understand where I had gaps in my skill set, both soft skills and technical and professional skills, and how I can address those gaps. That jump, primarily was my, having the backbone and the fortitude to be like, no, we need to make these other changes. But I also was willing to, when you're making that jump, a lot of people hesitate because it's a fear in the unknown. You're not sure if you're really ready for it. You're not sure if you can do it. You don't know until you actually do it. And also, I'll tell anyone, there's no leader who moves to a leadership role who has all the answers and knows everything. No. If they say so, I'm sorry, they are lying or they're just blind to what their capabilities are. So for me, it was, accepting the fact that, okay, I'm gonna get hits, I'm gonna get blindsided, it's gonna be a rough road. And I accepted that, and it was a very rough road. But more importantly, I took account and made sure I learned all the lessons from every mistake I made. I would have calls with my mentors, I would talk with my boss, I even would talk with my parents, because they were both successful executives in banking, and explain, even though they didn't know IT as well, but I would explain to them the thought processes around my decisions. And my father would say, yeah, you did that right, but you didn't think it through to this level. Or my mother would say, you dove way too deep and you just basically went down to your roots of being in the weeds and all the details, and you lost your boss because they have no idea what the message is, what you're trying to convey, what decision you're looking for. Those help. In terms of, if those of you who are looking for actual, like, what skill sets, keep up to date on your professional skills. Take refresher courses, do online learning classes. I'm always reading materials from, Gartner, McKinsey, various articles on LinkedIn. Whenever anyone posts something here on EQ, I immediately go, all right, let me save this article because I want to read it later on. On technical skill sets, if anyone who sits on their laurels of what you accomplished in the past and think that's my monument to myself and people will recognize it and move me forward, no, sorry. You have to your accomplishments of the past are great accomplishments, but they did not guarantee you success in the future. You need to show that you are able to continuously grow and develop. And that was one other thing that I remember. My first boss, when he promoted me into a director level role, he's like, you show that you can continuously improve yourself and you don't stop learning. And you have to demonstrate that even as a leader, you still have to constantly learn. I remember that role, I was seen as the checkpoint. Oops, sorry. I was seen as the checkpoint for him and for our executive leadership on making sure that whatever was being brought up by other consultants or teams was actually valid. So they looked to me as not as the expert, but as he put, he's like, you're the jack of all trades. You're dangerous in so many areas that you could sniff out where someone is not being honest or truthful or transparent and call it out, but not to the level that you can fully challenge them, but just enough that you'll make them scared and make them second guess and go back and revisit what they're talking about, what they're asking us to do. And that came from, just continuing, especially on my technical skills, taking courses, reading. I actually started mentoring youths at local nonprofits, specifically to keep up on my skill sets. Because as I was teaching these kids stuff, they would learn. In certain cases, like my nieces and nephews, they shot right past me in programming, so that I literally was like, okay, I gotta catch up now, because even they're getting too far ahead of me. But those are all qualities that I've always been told by my leaders that were key in them saying, you know what, yeah, let's give him the role. And my last statement would be around courage. Backbone is one thing, but having the courage to stand in front and also fight for your team. My teams knew no matter what, I always empowered them to make decisions. I was like, do not come to me as a checkpoint before you make the call. If it's a $1 million question and you feel the need to check, that's fine. But if it's something that's a quick decision, or there's something, an incident or an issue happening and you need to make a decision, make the call.
Yeah.
I give you full autonomy, full empowerment to make the decision, even if it's the wrong one. If it's the wrong one, guess what? We learn from it, we correct it, and we move on.
Yeah.
We do not, I never, I've had, especially during performance reviews, I know most of us are in the performance review cycle right now. People love to call out when someone makes a mistake. I'm the one in the room that goes, yeah, they made that mistake, but how quickly did they correct it? Did they learn from it? Did they make sure it was documented that no one else makes that mistake going forward? What was the actual impact of that mistake? And upon the correction, how big was that impact afterwards? Was it still a sizable crater, or are we talking about, I dropped a rock in the sand and there's a little divot there?
Yeah.
And when people stop and think about that, and I said, I was like, we are here as leaders to ensure that our teams are successful. And this means that they're going to make mistakes, and then we need to pick them up and dust them off and move them forward. Otherwise, they're going to become fearful and not want to make this jump into leadership, because they're going to think, well, then, no one really protects me. And, how do you, as a leader, I'm expected just to, chase after and beat down people? No, we're here to lift them up and bring them up and train them and get them to the level that they need to be. And it means if they stumble, as one person told me, she was like, yeah, if my son's, when you were walking, stumbles and falls down, I pick him up and we move on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. No, that's great, because it's almost like you're encouraging them to fine tune their instincts so that they do have courage. And the only way that you can do that is if you make those mistakes or make those errors, correct them, and then the next time around when a similar issue or problem or challenge, obstacle comes up, that instinct has then been fine-tuned because you've learned from that mistake before. So,
exactly, because I also want them to have in their mind that they can do my job. Because I don't plan on staying in my seat forever. And so I'm like, learn how to do this, because I want you to kick me out of my chair. Because my eyes are on someone else's chair. So you kick me out, I kick them out, we all move over.
Yeah, for sure. That's another, I have a mentor that says a very similar thing. She says to, I want you to be my competition in this, not just somebody who's below me. I want to get you to that level where you're working exactly the same level as me, so that we are competition, healthy competition. But that's the point. Okay, and so I have just got a final question, and that was in connection with a question that I posted in our community. And I thought your answer was incredible, and I just wanted you to elaborate on it, to be honest. And the question was, what is the single best thing about doing what you do? And your answer, if I'll remind you, was the opportunity to battle, to force change in an organization that is not certain about what it needs to change versus what they perceive as change with an impact. And I thought, I mean, going back to what we just spoke about in terms of challenging leadership and being defiant in your knowledge, just wondering if you could elaborate that in terms of your workspace and what you thrive off doing.
No worry. When you posted that, I literally I couldn't stop laughing as I was writing the answer. So basically, it's especially over these past couple of years with BLM and all the initiatives that companies have been doing on the diversity, equity, inclusion space. I've always looked at how to improve not only the opportunities and increase the number of opportunities for people of color and underrepresented minorities at organizations I was in, or that I'm currently in, or even if I was in previously, because I still work closely with colleagues back at my Accenture, Novartis, and corporate executive boards stints. But it's around trying to help those companies as well realize what needs to happen in order to change the cultural mindset. So when I was at Novartis last year, my lead and the Americas CEO had asked, is it possible to, start doing some sort of talks around BLM and educate our workforce on what exactly is going on here in the US.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, yeah, we can definitely do that. But what are you looking for? And they're like, well, we just want to make sure that we have this thing going. So, they didn't want to say it, but I'm sure it was, so it looks good in media. So I was like, yeah. So in my head, I kept thinking, all right, that's great, but let's figure out from those who are actually impacted, either currently internally, former employees, or people who are looking to break into the life sciences industry, what are they seeing as, what are their perceptions in terms of, what's going on? And then reversing it and, having a series of talks to cover both aspects of the topic. So that way those in leadership can understand where those who are not in those places are coming from, but also those who are, not in positions where they have full visibility, understand what their leaders are seeing and try to close that gap.
Yes.
For them. I'm right now in AWS, I'm working on a program where I'm trying to help underrepresented minorities in IT and infrastructure, which is one of the biggest spaces at AWS, and one also the biggest opportunities that AWS has to raise up minority representation. And in conversations with my leadership, they're like, oh, we have these great ideas and these great goals that we want to meet. And my first question was, great, so who did we talk to on the other side to see if these are the same goals that they have? Because I understand the top-down perspective, I know that very well, but this is something, DEI is not just a top-down, it's more of a bottoms-up than a top-down, because the top-down initiatives is what caused us to get into the situation where we're in right now. As I told one person, it's like, if every single company on the planet, when it comes to DEI, continues to top-down, they will, they are doomed forever. I won't say forever, but they're doomed to constantly show up in every single media report possible, because they are not listening to the people at the ground level and letting them raise up their concerns and what they would change they would like to see. Yeah. And that's a balancing act, because again, top down, they have their initiatives, they have their goals, which I'm sure they set with executives higher up. But at the same time, you can't accomplish those without those people coming up. And these are the ones who are really need the help. So it's really raising up all their concerns and then helping them formulate it into goals and initiatives that can actually help move. Yeah. One, address what the top-down goals are, but also move the cultural mindset of what can be done here in this case in AWS. Yeah. Be it from mentoring, from providing partnerships with HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, to reaching out and having a almost like a tutoring session for those who may want to apply for roles, and here's some key hints on getting through an interview or getting through a loop that not only are applicable to AWS but just to any company. Yeah. Every time I look online and someone's posting either an EQ or LinkedIn or wherever social media platform, questions about how do I get through an interview, what are the best tips on as a black man to pass through and make sure that they're seeing me for my skills and what I can contribute, and not the bias of who I am. And that's where it's like, okay, well, the company needs to know and train their staff to identify what are these biases that they may have. And a lot of these biases are just inherent in us. And we need that outside perspective of someone else looking and maybe shadowing, having someone shadow as an independent party on interviews or on loops to make sure that that the feedback being collected or being written has no bias, and it's actually truly focused on what can the person contribute to your company, versus well, they have all these skill sets but still not quite certain. And it's like, well, why? Quantify why this person isn't qualified. I had to do that recently because I'm hiring at AWS, and one of my questions, I was like, I'm not quite sure. And one of my team, he challenged me. He's like, well, why? Quantify it. And I
Yeah.
was like, no, I was like, thank you for that, because I realized I may have had a bias built in the back of my head that, and I was like, I went through all my notes and I was like, okay, here are the key responses on these key questions where I asked for specific data points where they missed the data points.
Yeah.
And I went back and asked them again and clarified to try to help them steer them in towards answering the question, and they still missed it. And I was like, that's why, it's not there yet, but let me provide them with the feedback on what they need to do to improve. And that is the other aspect. We need to make sure that we're providing people feedback, irregardless of race. When they don't get through, either the recruiter, HR, or even you as an interviewer, feel free to reach out to the person, to the candidate, and just say, hey, sorry it didn't work out, but going forward, I would recommend that you focus on X, Y, Z items, and maybe look at 1, 2, 3 as key things that you can do to help you the next time. Because I think you're almost there, but you just have a few blind spots and gaps, which we all have, that need to be covered. And if you do this, I think you'll do much better next time. And also offer the advice of, or they make the offer of, if you're still looking, there are other opportunities here in these other organizations, other companies. Most of us have, especially in leadership, have vast networks.
Yes.
Use your network and offer a network to those who you feel can do really well, but maybe not in your company, but maybe somewhere else, and provide them that avenue.
Yes.
So that they don't feel defeated and just give up and just say, what, it's not worth it. I met with one person, one candidate, Native American, who he felt very defeated after he did not get into a consulting role. And my first question to him was, okay, well, what feedback did you get? And he didn't get anything. And right now, especially now, Native American candidates every company is seeking them out. I was like, listen, here's what you need to do. Walk me through your responses. Walk me through how the interview went. And I was like, okay, you have these issues here. You went too into the weeds here. Raise it up. Here's how you would raise it up and summarize some of your statements. And I did a breakdown of his interview just to help with that, that skill set. And I'm by no means am I a qualified, recruiter or analyst, but it's being. I like to think it's being human. My parents, maybe they have a bias on this. They always said that I seek out the good in anyone I meet before they prove me wrong.
Yes, for sure.
And so I'm always willing to help anyone I meet until they prove me wrong.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because how you advised that young person who wanted to progress into the consultant role, you had then taken those nuggets that you had learned from your mentors, which were your parents, and used exactly the same terms. So it is definitely about passing on that information and being generous with it. And also talking about creating that culture, closing the gap, but also creating the culture from the bottom in order for each level to be informed of both sides, so that they're on a sort of level understanding.
It will never be level, and that's full transparency. It's never level, but you can get it as close as possible to level as you can. And it's, because there's always some difference there, but it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, a lot of these DEI as a whole is a hard topic to bring up and to discuss in any corporate environment. But it's one that must be had, and it's one that you have to figure out unique ways to get it on the table, but make sure that people feel comfortable enough and safe enough that they can voice their actual thoughts and concerns versus prepackaged messaging that they've been thinking through or they've been given.
Yeah, for sure. Alex, this chat was so great. So much useful information, amazing advice. Thank you so much for talking with us today. I can't wait share this onto the platform and on our socials. I'm sure a lot of people will find it useful.
I hope so. Thank you, Nicole, again for the opportunity. I really do appreciate it. And looking forward to throwing another curveball at your next poll question.
I'm ready.